Do you have a toward or away preference? Are you more motivated to move toward an objective or away from problems to be solved or prevented? What I'd like to do is talk you through some of the characteristics of toward and away, and let's see if they resonate with your profile. So let me explore the toward characteristics in some depth. So basically speaking, if you have a toward preference, you tend to focus on what you want. So in this context, if I asked you, what do you want in a car? You're probably going to say things like, I want it to be red, I want it to go fast, I want leather trim, I'd like 17-inch wheels. You're also more likely to be motivated by things like incentives. So we found for this that if I said to you, look, there's a potential opportunity for you to earn an extra $10,000 a year, a toward person goes, great, now where do I sign up? I'll do the $10,000. If you're more away from, we found that when you're offered this incentive, you tend to have what we call a bit of healthy skepticism, and you'll ask, yeah, but what do I have to do to get it? Okay, so slightly different approach. People that are toward, they may do things like leave the house with the garage door open or the house unlocked. Not because they're being irresponsible, just that they don't actually focus on the consequences of what could go wrong. It doesn't occur to them that they'll get robbed, so they often do these things. In fact, just recently, I left the house recently and left my door completely unlocked and went away for 5 days. I'm toward. What we found is that toward people also, they're not necessarily as good with time deadlines. Now, this is a guideline, not a rule, because what that means is, again, you haven't necessarily focused on the consequences of not meeting them, so you don't necessarily follow through on them all the time. Interesting on this too is that you're more likely to take bigger risks in return for greater potential rewards. Now, what I mean by that is I have a friend of mine that works at Macquarie Bank, and sometimes he rings me up and he says, John, I've got this stock tip. A lot of my customers are going into it, really good ones. I think it's going to double in 6 months. You should put $10,000 down. Now, when I hear $10,000 double 6 months, I'm toward, I go $20,000, or maybe if I put 15, I could get 30. So I put the money down. All right. What we found, if you're more away from, you'll want a little bit more evidence than just the stock tip. And you might want some more assurances. Maybe you want to make sure this person's given you a couple of good tips in the past. Maybe you want to look at the spreadsheets of the company and do more thorough analyses. Again, the healthy skepticism kicks in. The other thing for toward people is that people that speak in negatives frustrate you. And you tend to evaluate an away from person as negative. And again, they're not negative, they just have a different style of thinking to you. So if that's toward and that resonates with you if you're a toward person, let's have a look at the away from characteristics now. So away froms have a very good understanding of what they don't want. As we said, if I ask that person what they want in a car, they're more likely to turn around and say, well, look, I don't want a Holden, and look, I drive around the country a bit, so I can't have a white car because it gets dirty easily. I want something that's economical because petrol's expensive at the moment, and I want a reliable car because it costs a lot of money to get a mechanic to fix your car. So they don't actually tell you what they want, they tell you what they want to avoid. And in the past, I used to run relationship seminars and have a very similar type of structure. And I'd ask people, so what do you want in a person? What do you want in a husband? What do you want in a wife? What do you want in a boyfriend, girlfriend? And often, if they'd had bad experiences in the past, they'd end up telling me what they wanted to avoid. So again, this type of protocol works not just in the area of sales, but in life. What we found is that away from people, they're more motivated to get rid of threats and avoid problems. Again, they've thought about the consequences of actions, so they're less likely to leave the door unlocked or leave the garage door open because it just doesn't work in their style. They also tend to prefer making choices that have been proven over time when you've got an away from preference. So again, we spoke earlier about the Macquarie banker that was giving a stock tip. Away from person is more likely to want to get more evidence before they'll put $10,000 on a stock tip. A little bit more conservative in their thinking, or maybe they just want some assurances. We found that away froms tend to respond better with things like time deadlines. Again, they've thought about the consequences of those deadlines. Interestingly, troubleshooting and problem solving are natural skills for this person. So they're very, very good at picking holes in something. So if I want a document proofread, critically, I give it to an away from because they'll tell me what's wrong with it. What will a toward person tell me? What they liked about it. Okay, different type of feedback. Overdone and away from person may have a tendency to drop things to fix a problem. Okay, so again, overdone, it can create dramas for you. But the same thing on toward front. So we found that basically speaking, toward overdone is almost naive and away from overdone is negative. Now there's no good or bad with the thinking patterns as we spoke about earlier, but both are very good to have as strengths if you can do both. Now I'm very strong toward, so I often miss the away from. But again, there's no good or bad. They just motivate themselves to get whatever outcome they're looking for. And just so it happens that one person will motivate themselves by what they want to avoid or the issues they want to avoid. Another person will motivate themselves on what they want. They both end up getting their outcomes. They just go about it doing very different ways. So we found in sales, you really, really need to cater to the different style. Because if you're a toward person, me talking about all the issues that could come up, I mean, I find insurance sales is very much an away from product. And if all you do is you talk about all the issues that can come up, a toward person just goes, well, that's not going to happen to me. So you're willing to change your style. On the vice versa, if you get an away from in front of you and you try to talk about all the great things that will happen as a result of buying this product, if you haven't solved their problems, they won't act. So it's a very different style of thinking. And if you take anything away from the thinking patterns, you really want to get a distinction between toward and away.